Hey guys, so this video is going to be analyzing my own replay to emphasize a concept that has come up in countless coaching sessions for me that is crucial for any carry or any really farming hero to understand in terms of maximizing your game impact while you are farming. So let's go ahead and get into the replay so you guys can hopefully understand where I'm thinking, or understand what I'm thinking.
Banana slam jam.
So the concept that most importantly dictates farming, that is very new to me, maybe the last 6 months, and I believe almost every high MMR player thinks this way, is that the game resets every minute. And what that means is that all the camps on the map are respawning. So basically the map treats it like a new day every single time a minute happens. So it's super important that you judge carefully towards the end of a minute where you want to start your farming at the beginning of the next minute. And also, so many people have the question of, do I show up to fights or not? And a lot of this is dependent upon what's going on during the time in the game. So the reason why I say that is because if you're looking towards the end of a minute, there's probably less jungle camps available, right? Because people have been farming them for the last however 40, 50 seconds. So that means that you're more likely to be participating towards the end of a minute than you are at, say, the middle or 1/3 of the way through, because there's just less options for you. So I'm gonna start this game around 10 minutes. And the important part about that is that I'm starting it here because this is approximately the point in the game where you have to start thinking about where you're placing your hero on the map every minute. So if we look at the clock, that's the most important thing to always be looking at during this replay, is it's 10:46. I already farmed this camp. My mid laner's farming the camp behind me. So that means the only camps available to me on the map require me to go right? They require me to go over here. Otherwise, I'd have to walk all the way over here. And so if I'm at the end of a minute and there's no camps available to me, I'm either running away from where I think the opponent is in order to set up another minute of farm, or I'm going to walk towards where the opponent is because I think my hero is capable of fighting. So what this means is that I am not committing to fighting by walking towards the opponent. But say I'm a Juggernaut with Omnislash, a Faceless Void here with Chronosphere. I want to walk towards where the opponent is. And I know you guys can't see it at this exact moment, but the opponent is almost all bottom right now. So because I want to be able to go to this fight, what that means is that I'm going to show up right now. If the fight occurs, let's just watch it, right? If the fight occurs, then I'm going to participate. If it doesn't occur, then I'm going to farm away from the fight. Right? So this is the moment where they're pushing a tower. We have my ultimate. We have Witch Doctor ultimate. We show up to the fight, right? And that's all because we're thinking about the fact that from 10:46 until 11, we had absolutely nothing better to do with our time, and we were able to participate in fights, right? So we end up defending the tower, which is absolutely great. And whenever you go to fights like this, you generally, once you've given your impact, so when you go to fights like this, once you've made your impact, it's now important to make the same decision at 11:45. So I see all the enemy heroes running towards mid. I'm going to quickly clear this creep wave because that's as far up on the minute as I can go. And the path that I want to go, which is backwards, was covered by enemy heroes. So the goal of every minute is to start as far forward as possible and then farm backwards away from the opponent. Backwards, in this sense, means where is the opponent? Farm the opposite direction away from them. Generally, that's going to be towards your own base, but sometimes not. Like, say you're farming here and the opponent's up here. You farming backwards would mean farming like this, because that is away from where the opponent is. So in this case, I started my minute far up, as far as I possibly could, at 12 minutes, but the entire enemy team was behind me. So it's a combination of starting the minute as far up as you possibly can, and then once you do that, it's now time to either go backwards or if you're not able to go backwards, you usually will TP somewhere else to farm. So in this case, I had to get my TP delivered to me, and I'm going to leave. And so now, since we have a bunch of heroes that were over here, notice how by pushing this wave aggressively like we did, we delayed their bottom push by about 30 seconds. And that's why it's so important to start the minute as aggressively as you possibly can, thinking exactly like, okay, what creep wave, what jungle camp can I start with? Because every time you buy yourself a little bit of time, like the opponent's trying to group up here and take a tower, they're going to be here 30 extra seconds than they would be otherwise if I hadn't cleared this creep wave. So by doing that, I'm buying myself time to farm the opposite side of the map. So we're going to fast forward to the next minute, right? So in this case, it's now 13 minutes. I want to start as far forward as possible. I see them all on the map, right? Note that it's not generally worth starting the minute farther forward if you're passing creeps. What I mean by that is, like, if you think you can start the minute here, but that would require you to not farm this camp like you saw me do right before 13 minutes, then don't skip the camp, okay? Don't just be like, oh, BSJ told me to be as aggressive as possible. I want you guys to be farming almost every creep camp around you, unless you think you're scared of dying, while advancing on the map as much as possible, okay? So we're going to start at this creep wave since we see them all bottom. So what's going to happen is, at every point in this minute, I am willing to retreat back to my triangle. That is the option that I have given myself by starting the farming patterns really far forward. I want you to think that since we saw enemies down here, that if I had started here and then walked here, and then the opponents were now 3 heroes here, I would have nothing to do. I wouldn't have anywhere to farm, and Chronosphere is on cooldown. But by starting as far forward as possible, I'm giving myself the option at any point, if the opponent were to TP top, to just retreat to this farm. And that's why it's so important to give yourself options, because you're then just more so fluidly adjusting to what the opponent's doing. So I'm going to take this small camp, and my intent was to retreat to triangle if I ever needed to. But every time I see enemy heroes on the map, I feel enabled, allowed to advance, right? So I'm going to go back towards the creep wave. Finish that creep wave off. Now I'm thinking the same thing, because they're all missing again. So I'm going to retreat back to my hard camp. But now I see all the heroes again. I saw 3 more heroes. So that's going to allow me to advance again, right? We saw green as well bottom. So we actually saw 5 heroes. We saw all 5. So notice how I'm like, oh, I want to retreat to farm triangle, but I can actually just keep going. And so this is going to allow me to start minute 14 as aggressively as humanly possible. And as a hero that doesn't normally apply pressure, meaning I don't push towers or anything, I also just have a Midas. I have purely farming items. It's not only making it so I'm pressuring a tower whenever I can, but now, since I have Chronosphere, I'm somewhat near this fight. Remember how earlier I said as a carry that's able to participate, I'm not looking to go to fights. But if I'm purposely putting myself as aggressively as possible in this case, compared to like willingly just farming passively back to my triangle, it seems much more realistic that I can use the 5 seconds left on this minute to go somewhere around here, right? Which is effectively stealing camps from the opponent if they ever were to go here. And it's a double 2 birds, 1 stone situation, because I'm here farming aggressively, getting farm. But if the fight breaks out in a way that I want to help, I can go to it, right? So that's what I'm going to do here. Start the minute as aggressively as possible. Like, you have to carefully calculate. Do you think it's this camp? Do you think it's this camp? Sometimes it's this camp. The closer you are to the exact limit of your hero, the better, right? So Ember TP's top. That's going to allow me to farm backwards. I actually took that medium camp from Ember because he placed a remnant there, planning to farm it. And notice how, because I'm starting aggressively, I don't really run out of space, right? I always have creeps to hit. So now they're all missing. I don't see anybody. So this minute, I'm very scared. I even scanned to see if they're smoke ganking me. I don't quite have Maelstrom yet. So I'm going to retreat to my team in these cases, usually farm very defensively. Whenever the opponent's missing like this, my idea is that they're either down here, so after I see them, I will run back top, or they're top, ganking me, and I'm going to run back towards my team down here. Either way, I'm farming backwards. And even though I have Chronosphere, I'm not very survivable. I'll die to a couple stuns, especially Ember Chains. So I still need to be very careful when I don't see them. So now we see them bottom. I'm now going to start the 16-minute mark as far forward as possible. And in this case, forward means closer to the enemy team, right? I really need you guys understand that concept. Forward means towards the enemy team. Backwards means away from the enemy team, right? So in this case, what I mean by forwards is I know they're all bottom, so I'm going to try to start my farm around here. Once again, if I didn't have Chronosphere and I saw them all bottom, I would have probably cleared this wave and ran this way to go up, right? Because that's the aggressive farm on the opposite side of the map, right? But in this case, I want to take as far forward a farm on the same side of the map because I have Chronosphere. It's a big distinction that if you guys can master it, meaning like whether or not you want to fight and making these small adjustments, it can make such a big difference to like being at a fight that's opportunistic. So you're going to see in this case, I'm actually going to go to their Ancients, their triangle of sorts, and steal a camp real quick and then leave and go back top. So the idea was like, hey, that's where I'm going to participate in the fight if need be, and now I'm out of here. And this Morphling who wants to farm this area is definitely not going to be able to anymore because one of the 2 camps is just gone, right? So that adds up a lot. Going back to top to defend. We see the entire enemy team mid, but we don't see them now. But okay, we do. So we're going to advance as aggressively as possible on the 17-minute mark again. So notice how I went for farming items, and now I'm going for the survivability item. We made a video on that, the carry formula video. It's just super important to this concept that what this survivability item is meant to do is that, yes, it can help you fight, but notice how I told you there's times where I'm scared of dying, right? So even though I'm strong, like I do a lot of damage, I have Chronosphere, I want to build a survivability item that lets me start the minimark further forward on the map, especially when I'm by myself. So in this game, their main playmaker and guy that's going to kill me is their Ember Spirit with Sleight of Fist into Searing Chains. And the best like farming item, meaning while I'm farming, I use it to survive against chains, would be Manta. So that's what I'm going to go for. In this case, I'm also still kind of farming towards my team, right? They're all missing, so I'm very scared. And also, like, notice how I finished the camp before 18 minutes anyways. So I took my sweet-ass time killing that camp. Like, I was not trying to rush to kill that camp because I would have been done at 17:47 instead of 17:52. It doesn't actually make a difference, right? So if you're scared of getting ganked, just note that, like, you have all the time in the minute to finish the camps available to you. Don't rush them. Don't put yourself in precarious positions where you might get ganked. It's super important. These little nuances of carry. So I told my Witch Doctor to walk in front of me so I didn't die to a smoke. And now we're stuck, on the passive part of the map. And whenever you're stuck on the passive part of the map with your team like this, it is an amazing time where I look at the map, I say, guys, I don't have anywhere to farm. Like, look, like, I don't know where the opponent is. I have nowhere to farm. I do a lot of damage, but I'm not survivable. So we don't have the information to feel safe, but we're also capable. Smoke. That is exactly when you do it. So I called for a smoke with my team because I'm like, I don't really know where to go, guys. Let's use a smoke to get out of here. Enemy was rushing. We had no idea that they were doing that. And this is going to allow us to take a fight, right? The smoke gives us the superior information. And even though it looks like I don't do much here, the opponent was never able to commit because I had Chronosphere. Nobody saw that. That's for the blooper reel. I forgot he had Time Walk, so he had waveformed and Time Walked, so I missed. But okay, so the enemy is respawning, and so in these parts of the game, since it's not an exact minute, right, like they're respawning and the minute's already started, is that what I want to do is farm my way towards a creep wave that I wouldn't feel safe to clear while they're alive, okay? So in this case, if they were alive like 5 seconds from now, and they had this tier 1 tower, meaning they could get to bottom lane faster, I would have skipped this camp and ran all the way to this wave, cleared it, and then farmed backwards. But I want to hit this wave at the most efficiently safe time. That's what I want to do, okay? So in this case, I've got a little bit more time since there's no tier 1 tower bottom, and they've got a little bit of time on their respawns. I'm going to make my way all the way to this wave, farming 3 camps on the way there. So I see them all. I see them all over here now. So say they were missing, right? They weren't showing here. I wasn't sure where they were. I would have just farmed backwards. That's like the whole idea of advancing on the map when they're dead or when they're showing, right? Is that I would have just farmed here. I would have had 2 camps to farm because they're all missing, right? I would have just farmed backwards. But now I see them on the map. That's going to allow me to advance. I'm going to walk out, even farm this camp before the minute mark ends, or stack it, because I can be ultra efficient. And that's going to set me up to farm backwards this minute. Oh, but I see Morphling running at me. I see a few heroes mid, so I advance again. And farm backwards on the minute, right? So every time I see heroes on the map, you see me go back for a creep wave. Every time I don't see them, you see me farming backwards. So this minute, we started here. But we're actually going to walk forward on the map because we see Venomancer as well as Clockwork. So we actually are fine to walk forward on the map. You want as few minutes as possible that you are farming forwards. You'll notice, like in this instance where I'm farming forwards, almost every time that you run into a nuisance, somebody stops you from farming, it's when you're farming forward. So you want to avoid these moments as much as possible. There's moments that it's just going to happen. It just has to. Like I was farming efficiently backwards here the whole time. Even though we're winning on paper, the Morphling has Aegis, so the opponent feels stronger than us. I don't have my survivability item yet. So it's like one of these situations where it's the same thing. I don't see any farm. I'm not survivable, but I have playmaking potential. What does that mean? Smoke. So I TP to my team and look to call a smoke. We didn't have one though, was what happened in this case. So I just joined my team and restarted my minute. I see 3 heroes mid. I can assure you guys that if you don't have the information to farm, just don't farm. Like, I know that sounds so inefficient, but notice how every time I've been stopping my farm this game, it's because the opponent's all missing and I don't feel safe because I don't have my survivability item yet. Once you get that crucial survivability item, it becomes infinitely harder to die. Certain games are harder than others, right? Sometimes there's like 4 heroes that kill you, right? Or like 3 different abilities that kill you. In that case, usually you just buy like a BKB. Or you buy a Blink Dagger, because the Blink Dagger helps you avoid all the damage or the catch, and BKB usually covers everything. But in this case, you know, I'm allowed to go for a more luxurious farming item, right? So advancing on the map because we see them all mid, advancing on the map because we see them all top, starting our farming pattern all the way in their Ancients. That's not something I planned at 22 minutes, but I see this, right? Super important to farm as far forward on the map as possible. So we're going to farm backwards towards our team. If we had started the minute anywhere further back, I wouldn't necessarily feel safe to go here now because they're no longer showing here. And my team's behind me, so I would have ran into them faster. So it's so important that you do this. Going to be here with my team again. Land a really nice Chronosphere. And the point of these farming patterns is when you farm aggressively, it is insanely palpable how much more often you find yourself connected to your team. Like, you know, I'm farming backwards towards my team, and it just sets you up for these opportunistic fights. Because even though I've been farming 90% of the game, I've been at maybe every fight but 1 or 2. So notice how they're all dead. I'm starting my minute mark as far forward as possible. Same thing here. I'm actually farming a bit forwards. This was maybe a bit noob. I could have farmed these 2 camps first and then farmed backwards. This might have been a bit noob, honestly. And this is what the Manta does. You know, it allows me to farm that much further forward without my team there. So instead of starting my minute safely here, maybe in my head I hadn't even adjusted yet. Like, because with no Manta, I would probably start here. But with Manta, I was willing to farm here. So maybe I just hadn't fully adjusted in my head yet. It could be that simple. So new minute. Use that time to check a rune. I mean, that's even like a small thing, right? 25, 55. I'm going to advance on the map. Usually when I'm advancing on the map, I'll ask myself, what's like the most relevant thing I can do in the game? Because notice how I have 5 seconds of downtime. So I'm like, oh, it's 26 minutes. I'm near a rune. Cool. Like, if Roche was maybe potentially respawning, I'd go check that. This is the moments in the game between, like, the 45-second mark to the minute mark where you run out of camps, and as a carry, you do things in the game. Relevant things, you know, checking objectives, connecting to your team, being more aggressive on the map. This is where you do relevant things. It's super important, right? So We're going to, you know, push this wave aggressively and connect to our team. This is what you can start doing when you're survivable. If you're not survivable, please do not show on creep waves. But I felt pretty survivable, and that's a lot about how itemization works, is acknowledging exactly how the opponent kills you. If there's no item that keeps you alive, you'll usually have to play off map, which means you're not showing on creep waves, you're not presenting yourself to the enemy team, and we're winning, so I'm going to go for a second survivability item that's also somewhat of a kill item. Starting the new minute really far up, but they're all missing, so I didn't feel safe to go to the next camp. And notice how the survivability item lets them go on me, and I'm still going to live, right? And that's why early game, every play that was being made was me behind my team, while every play since I've gotten Manta was me in front, my teammates using that to enable them to lead the charge, right? Nobody saw that. But honestly, this is like enough for this replay for you guys to understand the message that I'm trying to present. I will tell you guys that it doesn't feel like you're doing fancy things. A lot of people may even watch this replay and say, BSJ, your team carried you. For some reason, I myself and a lot of Dota players expect the carry to be like some god tier impact from 10 to 25 minutes or so. But the fact is, that's your build-up stage. What's most important about this stage of the game is that you're being as impactful on the map as possible, pushing in lanes, taking some jungle camps from the opponent. That's impact. Be honest, like that is impact. You are out farming the opponent and then not dying so that you scale into the late game. That's your job. You know, obviously you're going to get smoke ganked sometimes. You're going to mess up sometimes, but it's all just a territorial war, right? And so even though the majority of the fight carrying has been my team throughout the course of this time, there's no doubt impact coming from the carry. And this is how you win. This is how you win in the carry role. It's nothing fancy, but even just that little impact where like bottom lane, I chronosphered 3 heroes, did like virtually no damage, but we defended the tower. That's impact, right? In this case where I get gone on and I chronosphere, but then get Eulsed. We still win the fight. You know, maybe I die afterwards because I'm a noob, but we still win the fight. I just want you guys, hopefully, to buy in to the fact that I promise you, this is a large reason why I'm winning MMR, why I've climbed 1,200 MMR in the last 4 months, according to my Dota Plus Battle Pass. It's not fancy, but it gets the job done. And it's exactly how I see these other carry players playing. You are farming the majority of the game, but that extra little impact you have on the map pressure, on the team fights, that little 10% of the game makes such a massive difference, and it requires you to play that 90% of the game that you're farming as aggressively as possible. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye-bye.